Hello and welcome to the Bruce Montalvo Show. I'm your host, Bruce Montalvo. It's September 26, 2012. And on today's show, I'm glad to be joined by Republican Party of Los Angeles Representative Jose Aguilar of East Los Angeles, who is best known for his commitment to his community and small businesses here in Southern California. Hello, Jose. Thank you for being on our broadcast.
Hello, Bruce. It's good to be on.
I wanted to ask you about an incident you had back in 2010 when the Republican Party ambushed you at a meeting and removed you from the Republican committee. What happened with that?
Okay, that's very simple to answer. The liberty-minded Republicans took over the Central Committee, Executive Committee, back in 09 elections, and we took control in 010. And we took control of the Executive Committee. We had the numbers to do that, and we took control. Then, 6 months after we took control, the Neocons in the party created a rebellion with, I guess, some of the executive committee that didn't show for the organizational meeting that we had when we took control. So basically, they got the natives restless. And I'll make a very long story short, they made sure that we couldn't raise any money, so they attacked us at a purse string. So all the so-called Republican establishment donors would not help us out at all with the new liberty-minded administration. And the neocons attacked us on our purse strings and then proceeded to attack us with a coup d'etat. And I would suggest that was an illegal coup d'etat because there's nothing in the bylaws, there's nothing in Robert's rules where so-called rule of the majority, two-thirds of the floor, could remove elected executive board members, especially if they were duly elected. But needless to say, that took place. It was a coup d'etat. Then our faction, our Liberty faction, went to court, and we filed an injunction. We tried to file an injunction. The judge didn't give it to us. So basically, but before that, the ruling of the judge, we had a cease and desist order from our attorney, and the attorney basically wrote the Neocon faction to basically cease and desist until we have this hearing or we have this heard in court. In other words, have the court render decision before we can start actualizing meetings. In other words, don't conduct any business until the courts decide who's justified. So, well, they didn't. So then we started a executive board, and they had an executive board. So at the time, the Secretary of State gave the documentation for 2 chairs. In other words, the Secretary of State recognized Robert Vaughn and Jane Barnett both as chairs of the Republican Party of Los Angeles County. Long story short, that created a big uproar. It was a big, everybody basically went nuts over the fact that there were 2 executive board members, okay? No, executive chairs, recognized by the Secretary of State. So what I did is I took our document from the Secretary of State along with the cease and desist letter to the Neocon meetings, okay? And then I presented, I basically passed out to all the executive board members that were there, all the AD committee members that were there. I gave them all the cease and desist letter from our attorney, and we also, showed them and gave everybody a copy. I gave everybody a copy of the Secretary of State acknowledging Robert Vaughn as the chair. Well, to my surprise, Jane Barnett comes out, and then she shows her copy of the Secretary of State as, well, I found that then she basically looked at me and said, "You know what? I'm taking you out tonight." And she had her executive board members,
Wow.
and they basically looked at me in the parking lot and said, we're running you out tonight. And I told them, well, look, number one, you can't do that because, you're not giving me any notice. I'm here, and then if you do run me out, you need the express consent of my committee, because I'm an executive board member also.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a member of the 46th committee, and they would need my committee to go along with their rendering of running me out of the party. But technically, they can't. But they did. So I basically said, I'm not going to let this happen. I'm going to videotape them, breaking the bylaws. Hopefully see if I can get a lawyer interested in, in the fact that they're not following their own bylaws. So I basically got my video camera, walked in there, and videotaped them excommunicating me, so-called vacating my chair, because I had the audacity to hand all the committee members the cease and desist letter from our attorneys and the notification from the Secretary of State that Robert Vaughn was the duly elected chair of the Republican Party of Los Angeles County. So, but they did mention those two things. They did not mention it. They basically accused me of being disruptive and destructive to the Republican Party. That was the charges that were laid on me. They didn't specify what was it about me that created a disruption, or what was it about me that made me destructive to the Republican Party of Los Angeles County. They never got into that.
Well, obviously it was your liberty-minded state of mind, right? That's what was destructive to them.
Well, yes. Anything having to do with due process, or trying to have your day in court, or following the bylaws. Neocons are basically, they go for the jugular. They by any means necessary, they take the reins of power. Much exactly what they did with this last convention that we had in Tampa, Florida. A lot of those so-called duly elected delegates never made it onto the floor. They were prevented, or they were disqualified. So there's a lot of shenanigans that the neocons are doing to control the party apparatus. And one of their justifications is, look, we got the purse strings, you don't. So whoever's got the gold makes the rules. The golden rule, he that has the gold makes the rules. And it's basically how the party's been run. It's basically run by the few neocons, individuals that supposedly have the money to then, coerce their version of their version, or how they implement their point of view onto the party, both in the local, state, and federal level. And that's wrong, because I didn't join the Republican Party to be part of a social club. I have this innate belief in civil liberties. I believe in habeas corpus. I believe in due process. And the neocons have no sense of that. They just completely they would prefer a police type state. They're not too interested in civil liberties. They just want law and order, and as long as it's on their terms, they're happy. So all I could tell you is I had a horrific experience early on, as a Latino trying to make a difference in the Republican Party, as a Latino that was affiliated myself with Ron Paul. I was basically humiliated, drummed out of the party, and all because I wanted due process, and I wanted, us to have this dealt with in court, and not make this, ludicrous things of having two separate, county parties functioning at the same time. I didn't think that was proper. I mean, we're willing to put our needs if they were willing to put theirs, but obviously that didn't happen.
Now, many people in America ask themselves why immigrants head north. To be more precise, Mexican immigrants head north. Now, we know it's primarily due to NAFTA and GATT destroying Mexican agriculture, the North American Free Trade Agreement, General Agreement of Tariffs, and Trade passed in 1994. Now, Bill Clinton is being paraded nowadays as a hero, but he quietly slashed the throat of the U.S. economy when he signed the bill, which since then has sent American jobs to foreign nations like communist China. And it's basically setting the stage for the formation of a European Union-style superstate here in America. Your thoughts?
Well, first I want to say that all politics are local, and the issue of jobs is about as local as it's going to get. I come from East LA, okay, Boyle Heights County, where County USC Medical Center is at. And when I was a child in the 80s, okay, it was still when Reagan was in power, we, believe it or not, we had a thriving industrial park, okay? I myself, at the age of 16, worked at a brake factory, okay? It was full of asbestos, but I worked there. It didn't matter. I was making money. It was my summertime job. I made money. I did what I had to do to survive. But the thing is, all or most of those industrial blue-collar jobs are gone. You go through our industrial park area and it's all vacated, it's all empty. And one of the main reasons is because now when you go to AutoZone, most of your bricks are made in Mexico or in foreign countries. So, you know, that domestic economy side is basically gone. All we're left with is service jobs, which I have one of them, but I'm not. It is what it is. So the issue with NAFTA and GATT is very simple. I'll give you, there's a lot of instances how trade manipulates, but basically you got transnational corporations that want to thrive on the world stage, and they have no loyalties to any nation state or to its people. Okay, they don't see themselves as being loyal to a certain, you know, constitution or the red, white, and blue or anything like that, or any nation state. Okay, like what's that big Archer, Midland, and what they do is they're huge corn producers. Okay, and what they do is very simple. They go and they get heavily subsidized by the federal government to produce corn for their so-called ethanol and other products. But what they do is they take their surplus corn and then dump it in Mexico. Okay, now, Mexico had a huge, thriving corn farmers type market. Basically, they produce their own corn in Mexico for their own tortillas, which is a staple of Mexican food. Tortillas is the staple of Mexican food. Well, now, after American corn that is subsidized was dumped into Mexico, the local corn was more costly to buy, and the quality of the American corn was somewhat better than the Mexican corn. So what happened is that, you know, obviously, you know, people, the consumer, say, well, if I could buy this corn for 4 pesos, you know, a kilo, and the Mexican corn for 6 pesos a kilo, I'm going to buy the cheaper corn. So that basically drove the local Mexican farmers out of business. Then the same corporate, you know, Archer Midland went, and others, there's other corporate interests, went down there and bought out all the small Mexican farms. Okay, so let me just get to the chase. So basically, all those small farmers that was the backbone of Mexican, you know, economy back in the 60s and 70s, when the 90s kicked in, a lot of them basically sold their farms to corporate conglomerates, both in Mexico or in the United States. They basically sold their lands off because it could not compete with the corporate conglomerates' price dumping onto the markets. In other words, the mom and pop farmer could not compete with the prices that these corporate conglomerates that were dumping corn into Mexico. Now, mind you that this corn is heavily subsidized by the U.S. taxpayer. So it has government subsidies to it. So you got the Mexican farmer competing with government subsidized corn being dumped into Mexican market, which is, you can't compete. So you have a huge slew of farmers that basically gave up farming, and all of a sudden that was the way of life for them, and the only way they could survive is get themselves back, I guess, here in the United States and try to work in the agriculture business here, okay, which is somewhat more protected than in Mexico. So then you get this huge wave of migration because of the NAFTA, GATT, and the World Trade Organization, and corporate conglomerates all cooperating with each other, putting the small business farmer out of business. Now, nobody looked out for the small business farmer because they don't have lobbyists both in the Mexican government or the American government. So they were basically thrown under the bus, and now they have to migrate in order to eat. I mean, not even survive, just basically eat. The whole thing with Chiapas in Mexico, one of the big explosion over there is because they couldn't afford the corn for the tortillas. In other words, they had the chili, but then they never had the tortillas to, put the chili in. That's basically what they used to eat. They used to eat tortillas with chili, and they couldn't afford the corn. And it's tough because the work environment over there has been so destroyed because of NAFTA and GATT. Now, the United States gets advantages because they get to, sell off their subsidized food items in Mexico, government subsidized food items, and then make a profit out of it. The thing is, the local mom and pop family-owned business can't compete with that. And that's just one of many other things that NAFTA and GATT has brought onto Mexico. But what I'm worried about is that the Mexican government is losing its legitimacy because it's very simple. When there's only so much immigration is used by the Mexican government as a political safety valve.
Yeah.
And the reason you have all these organizations, LULAC, MALDEF, is because they're protecting the oligarchy in Mexico from a civil revolution by making sure that the immigrants are basically able to flow out of the country in order to protect the oligarchs in Mexico. Because, as long as there's work here in the United States for them and they're sending money back, that gives the oligarchs a way out because they don't have to provide too much social programs in Mexico to keep the natives from starving.
Well, absolutely.
They don't have to produce the jobs or invest in the jobs or try to protect their farmers. They don't have to do any of that. They simply take their problems and the political safety valve and have them migrate into the United States.
Jose, I even heard you state that, sorry to cut you off, but I even heard you state that GDP, the gross GDP, immigration does not work unless we have a gross domestic product over 5%, which is true.
That's exactly right. If we had the amnesty right now as we speak, okay, unemployment rate in California is upwards of 12%, okay? And I don't want to argue if it's 12.1 or if it's like 15%. I don't want to argue the specific, percentage because it varies. There's people that are unemployment and there's people that have literally given up and just dropped off the unemployment because they're no longer considered unemployment because they've been unemployed for over a year, so they just basically ignore you altogether. They don't count you. So but let's just say 12%. Okay, so let's say you do provide the amnesty, and we got amnesty tomorrow. Boom, everybody kicks in. Well, what is that going to do with the unemployment rate? Okay, very simple. If you don't have your GDP upwards of 5 or 6%, you're not going to be able to create the jobs to facilitate the amnesty of all the legalized workers that are now going to be in the job market competing with everyone else. Because guess what? The unemployment rate's going to go double. So instead of having 12%, it would creep up to 8 18, 16, or 20%, because that's not going to change the environment. You still need the physical jobs to be able to accommodate the legalized immigrants. And if you don't have that, you're creating social chaos. Now, most of the socialists and the communists, they would welcome this because they would basically say, well, it's really not their job to look for jobs. I mean, they could basically go on the welfare system and have the state provide them with food, shelter, and housing and health care. Well, if you follow that model, that too creates an issue of state, not being able to, bankruptcy. We're like over $100 or $200 million in the hole now. Right now, as we speak, that's the whole reason with Prop 30. They're trying to jack up the sales taxes, and the reason for that is because they can't make up the difference. Okay, so and if California goes into higher and higher taxations, you're killing the jobs. See, the only way to grow yourself out of the deficit is by economic growth. You need to basically have the economy grow so you can have the revenue stream come in, because then more people pay income taxes, more people buy up more products, and you're creating the wealth, and you can pay off the debt or balance the budget that way. But what they want to do is increase the taxes to pay off the budget. So this is getting back to immigration. So we have people both in the United States and in Mexico that are desperately trying to survive. But what's been going on, that there's free trade, that again only provide benefits to the transnational corporations at the expense of the local mom and pop shop owners or farmers. It's not working out, because I don't see. I mean, GM again, that's heavily subsidized by the federal government now, and well, that's the only reason they're alive, and they're competing against Toyota and all these other companies. But what we have to do, okay, is we got to follow the Ron Paul model, and we got to start, producing things here back in the United States. I mean, I want to see a day where I can buy my underwear. I don't know if you know this, but fruit of the looms is no longer made in the United States.
Wow.
And I don't know that's hitting people in their mindset, because I don't know what's more American than being able to buy your underwear in the United States. I mean, do you understand? That's when you lose that.
Hey.
When that's lost. I mean, God, that's when you got a real serious issue, and people need to wake up, and they got to modify these trade agreements so we can start having local jobs and protecting local jobs, so we can start having the local economies back. Because I can't have a bunch of empty factories in my neighborhood, because what's going to happen is you create dependence. I mean, I don't blame people from going to the welfare office if they can't feed themselves, but if they can't work because there's no jobs, then what are they going to do?
Exactly.
So we're in the death spiral, and that's the thing. The immigration issue is I'm very sympathetic, because I understand, why the immigrants are coming here, because of these trade deals that don't benefit them back in their home country. It does benefit the transnational corporations, but it doesn't quite benefit the individuals, and that is a political problem. But see, here's the thing: our political leaders here do not pressure the Mexican government to start, protecting their farmers, or start making them invest in jobs in Mexico and try to, increase the salaries up there in Mexico. They don't do that, okay? And so what you do is they're protecting the oligarchs by allowing this immigration into the United States. If, let's say, we did put a halt to the immigration, that would basically make the Mexicans go back to the Mexican government and make them more accountable, because they're no longer, outside the country not voting. They're going to have to go back into their country, and they're going to have to take control of the reins of power. They're going to have to tell the conglomerates over there, no, you're going to basically not get into these crazy trade deals that basically put our family farms out of business. You're going to have to start looking out for our family farms, and then you coerce the change. But on immigration, I think, and I'll give you a prime example. This is another example of the DREAM Act. It's very controversial because everybody thinks that these young immigrants are very deserving of an education. Okay, I understand that. But look what took place. What took place was very simple. What happened was when the DREAM Act was enacted, okay, the college fees, the college fees went up 30%. And the reason it went up 30% because the pool of money that the state puts into Pell Grants and all the, to subsidize the tuition rates for the college students, that didn't go up with the DREAM Act. You basically put another 3 million students into that system of subsidized tuition.
Exactly.
Okay? So the laws of supply and demand are very, very real. And I don't care how much of a start-raving immigrant right socialist you are not going to defy the laws of supply and demand.
Absolutely.
You will not defy the laws of supply and demand because if there's a greater supply, if there's greater demand, right? But you don't have the tax base, you don't have the money there, then whoever's going to be drawing on that is going to they're going to have to increase the tuitions or they're going to have to decrease the services. Now here's the thing. They don't bother cutting the salaries. If everybody got a 30 or 15% pay cut, they could accommodate the 3 or 4 million extra DREAM Act students that are going into the UC system. Well, that's not something that the socialists want to talk about, cutting the salaries. What they want to do is increase the tax base with Prop 30. But then what they don't realize is it's like a snake eating its tail. Okay, you increase the taxes, then you further decrease the tax base because you're basically destroying the business climate. And if you don't have a business climate producing the jobs to pay for the taxes that you need to pay for these schools, then guess what? That's going to create further tax tuition hikes. So they already got 30%. That's already done. As soon as the DREAM Act got signed into law, within about 30 days, 30% increase kicked in. And further increases are going to start kicking in even further. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the state UC system has stopped taking domestic tuition. In other words, they're no longer accepting students on the subsidized tuition any longer. They're only taking in foreign students. So the reason they're taking in the foreign students is because the foreign students pay the full tuition amount. They don't get the 30-40% discount, whatever it is that they get on the UC system. They pay the full amount. So now the UC system has stopped taking in students on the subsidized level and are only allowing out-of-state college students to come in. So if you're from Saudi Arabia or from Europe or from everywhere around the world, well, you have to pay the full tuition cost. And you are now allowed to participate in the education system. So this is a direct result of the DREAM Act. Now, what the socialists would tell you is, well, let's go tax the rich. Okay, well, let's say hypothetically you and me were the 1%. I would rather take my money to Nevada where I'm not going to have state income tax issues. Mm-hmm. Why? Why would I suffer here in California if they keep increasing the state income tax? I'll go live in Nevada, Utah, or even Florida where they don't have state income tax. Okay? So a lot of people have to understand, if we need our millionaires because the millionaires create, they have to spend money on detailing their cars, buying cars, buying yachts, and believe it or not, those jobs trickle down to the blue-collar workers because then you're going to need blue-collar workers to come in and build the yachts, build the mansions, or detail the cars, even the car wash detailing, whatever. Or even the maid service. Okay, they pay for maid service. So, but if you alienate the 1%, the rich, and you drive them out of the state, California recently lost 1/3 of its high-income earners, have basically left the state of California altogether. And with these new tax proposals, Prop 30, you're going to have even more of an exodus. So if you lose your 1%, then who's going to be left to pay the taxes? You are. You will be. The blue-collar worker will be. You, the star-craving socialists, are going to pay for this through your sales taxes.
Oh, not at all.
They're going to start jacking up your sales taxes from 8% to 15% or 10% or 11% because they can't get it from the 1%. Okay, because the 1% has left the state. So, there's consequences. There's consequences to this socialist utopia that they want to produce. And we live in a capitalist system, whether they like it or not. We live under the laws of supply and demand, whether they like it or not.
Absolutely.
And now the tuition, issue, the students are now finally realizing it. Oh, they realized it real quick because they got hit with the 30% increase, and all of a sudden accepting new students. They're only taking in out-of-state students. So they got the consequence of the DREAM Act, okay? But they voted for it, so now they're going to have to live with the consequences. But what they're going to have to do is either you cut the salaries and the pension obligations, because that's the best way to do it, or you increase taxes. Okay, increasing taxes is right, and if they go that route, they'll again shrink the economic market out there. They'll shrink it, and they'll get less money going into the state, which means higher and higher tuition rates. So I'm hoping that the students finally come to their senses and start realizing that there's no such thing as a free lunch. And I think they're realizing it, but I think things are going to have to get a lot worse before it gets better, before people finally start understanding why, stuff like the DREAM Act has a direct impact on them.
They're about to get real worse with the passing of QE3 recently, Jose. I mean, it will hit the fan.
Well, here's the deal. Because we are the world's reserve currency, we have 100 military bases around the world, and the reason we have 100 military bases around the world is to make sure that the world's commodities are basically priced in dollar denominations. In other words, oil, gold, commodities of any type, we're coercing a lot of nation states to sell their commodities in dollars through our military presence. Okay, now that helps our economy out because we're able to export our inflation throughout the world. That, along with having the Chinese and the Japanese buy up most of our treasury notes right now. So we're able to export we're able to export our inflation throughout the world. The problem with this is sooner or later people are going to get sick of buying our debt. So they're going to start realizing that the debt we'll never be able to pay it back, and they're going to start realizing that this could be worthless, paper. And once they start selling the treasury notes, once they start dumping the treasury notes back onto the market, that's when the inflation is going to go in reverse, and then have the inflation be exported back into the United States, and that's when we're going to feel it. And we're already having a lot of nation states kind of rebelling on having that's why Libya, that's what the whole war of Libya is about. It's not about democracy or bringing those democracy to Libya, because they could care less about democracy. They don't care. They don't care for democracy. They don't care for central republic. What they want is a caliphate. That's the mentality. It's how that's how they're raised. That's the religion. They cannot separate the religion that to a Muslim, he'll look at you like you're out of your mind, because they cannot separate church and state. It's ingrained in their childhood, so they're programmed to consider
almost cult-like
church
in a
and
way.
the state one entity. I don't know if I'm making sense. So it's not. So the only reason we went into Libya is to continue their oil exports into dollars. That's the only reason that we're subsidizing Al-Qaeda and all those radicals on it, is to keep the dollar pegged to their oil exports. That's the only reason. They don't care who runs Libya. They don't care what runs Libya. They don't care if it goes back in the caliphate, or they don't care what. All they want is to make sure that if they got oil, the oil exports are in dollars.
Jose, what do you make of the recent Arab uprisings and the fact that many of the rebels fighting in Libya and Syria have ties to Central Intelligence? And it's also reported that many of them haven't even seen the 13-minute disinformation video mocking Muslims, many of the rioters. And the fact that 3 days before the deadly assault on the U.S. consulate in Libya, a local official says he warned American diplomats about the security there. Also, we're getting word that the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi was carried out by the same operatives the U.S. armed during the overthrow of Colonel Gaddafi. Your thoughts?
Okay, the Arab Spring is basically based on the Middle East dictators that all of a sudden went rogue on the central bankers around the world. The gold dinar. The Arab Spring was based on the gold dinar. So you got to understand the politics of the gold-backed dinar. Once you understand the politics of the gold-based dinar, you'll understand the politics of the Arab Spring. The reason you got all our government agencies over there causing all this civil strife is because their governments. Libya, for example, was purchasing gold, and they basically they were trying to do a regional between Iran, the North African states, and a few other Middle East countries, and they wanted to basically sell their oil in gold only, or gold reserve currency. What that means is they wanted to basically stop selling their oil in dollars. They wanted to get themselves off the dollar reserve. When they did that, they literally basically signed their own death warrant, cut their own throat, and that's when the central bankers went into action. That's when they jumped in. And the central bankers could care less who runs the government. They'll cut a deal with these Muslim caliphate type Al-Qaeda people. They'll cut a deal with them and say, look, we'll let you have the government there, but all we ask in return is to make sure that you produce your oil in dollars. As long as you guarantee us that, we'll hand you the reins of power. And they could care less about democracy, and the Arabs could care less about oil being denominated in dollars, as long as they have control and reign of power. Because what they ultimately want is a caliphate. Their goal is a caliphate. Now, a caliphate is not our perception of democracy or a sense of republic. Okay, a caliphate is the merging of the religion with government. It's basically one and the same. When you go tell a Muslim about the separation of church and state and all of that, they look at you like you're out of your mind. They look at you like you're literally crazy, like you're stark raving mad. Okay, because that concept of separation of church and state is completely foreign to them. Okay, what they want is a caliphate. when you realize that the main purpose of the Al-Qaeda groups and all these other radical, what's their main purpose of the caliphate, and they're able to, and they'll sacrifice their natural resources in order to gain the utopia of a caliphate, then you can start understanding the Arab Spring, and that's why the Arab Spring came into effect, because the bankers to fight the central government there, the dictators, and the only people available are the Islamists, Caliphate Islamists, and because they're fighting for their causes, and we provide them the money so they go fight Syria and Libya, and in return, we get control of their resources denominated in dollars. And we get rid of these concepts of selling their natural resources in gold, or having them create their own currency, such as the gold-backed dinar. All that stuff is basically thrown under the bus, and we preserve our status quo. So, that's basically the mainstay of foreign policy over there. And I don't buy into it, because these people that want the caliphate, as soon as they take control, they're going to come gunning for us, because they have to, because we don't have a caliphate. Okay, we're anathema to them. They want the whole world to go under the caliphate. They just don't want their own nation state to be under caliphate. This ideology of a caliphate is supposed to take place worldwide, so they're going to make us go under a caliphate, whether we like it or not. That's their religion. That's what they're going to do.
Now let's go to a commercial break. If you have any questions regarding the economic crisis, government cover-ups, Big Brother, or the New World Order, be sure to contact us at the Bruce Montalvo Show at gmail.com. Welcome back to the Bruce Montalvo Show. Again, I'm glad to be joined by my guest, Jose Aguilar. He is the candidate for Assembly District 53. Now, Jose, what are your thoughts on the ACLU's recent lawsuit against the U.S. government over the CIA's use of drone strikes against suspected terrorists overseas, including American citizens such as Anwar al-Awlaki?
Well, this is the see, to the neocons, they don't have any concepts of, or they've given up on the concepts of due process, habeas corpus, posse comitatus, having a trial of your peers and stuff like that. They've given up on that. It's basically, if somebody in the briefing considers you an enemy, then they could execute you in some kind of secret finding somewhere in government and basically get rid of you. So people don't realize that, you could go after the so-called Muslim Americans right now, but that could be anybody else. It could be people that believe in animal rights. It could be even anything. It could be any American. Because the whole concept of the Constitution is to guarantee American citizens the right of due process. And that's where the ACLU is trying to stop these drone attacks, because not so much because of its value of a, going after the bad guys. Yeah, they could be bad guys. They could be evil people. They could be coming after us. But what you're going to have to do, you're going to have to arrest them, bring them to the United States, give them their day in court, convict them, have their jury of peers find them guilty, and then provide the proper punishment. And that's how our Constitution is based. That's how our civil liberties are based. But in this so-called war on terrorism, Neocon type, battles that we're fighting all over the world, all this habeas corpus due process is thrown out the window. And posse comitatus, I mean, that's all gone now. So what do we have left? I mean, what kind of nation state deprives a citizen of their rights to due process? We're becoming a third world,
dictatorship.
Type of, where basically you disappear. I don't know if you understand this. In Central America, if you spoke out against the government, you disappear. People, one day you were walking down the street, and then the next day, nobody could find you. You're not at your home. You're not at your work. You're basically a disappeared person. There's disappearances. And that's what happens in third world type countries. And I feel that the United States could now be enacting that to its own citizens, where now all of a sudden you disappear. Now they could hold you indefinitely without charging you with a crime, without giving you your day in court, without giving you a jury, without having a conviction, without having your due process, without seeing the people that are charging you, without looking them in the eyes and seeing who these people. All of a sudden, you disappear. You basically provide. They're basically creating disappearances, much like they do in these third world dictatorships. So that's where we're at. I feel that the ACLU is good. They're doing a good job, because what they want to do is implement due process. They want to make sure that whoever the CIA wants to go after, they have their day in court. Now, I don't know, maybe to the CIA that seems like a foreign type thing, but every CIA agent is sworn to protect the Constitution of the United States. They're sworn by it. Okay, a lot of our federal officials, they take the oath, and when they take the oath to become those federal officials, one of the mainstays of the oath is to protect and support the Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. So who's your enemy when your due process rights are vacated?
Absolutely.
That's the question that the ACLU is asking. And I'm very troubled at the fact that these drones are basically, evaporating people with bombs. And I understand there's some bad guys that are probably evil, but you got to balance that out with our due process. And I'm not saying if you're not an American citizen, I would separate that, because if you're a Saudi Arabian or anybody else, then hey, that's another matter. But if you're an American citizen, you definitely, even though, yes, you might be Muslim, and yes, you might have some radical beliefs, but I believe you're entitled to have your day in court.
Absolutely.
And have the juries render the conviction and judgment instead of these drones and the CIA. So I'd rather have this dealt with a jury system than with drones. So that's my view on the ACLU.
I wanted to ask you about the recent law that was just passed in California, making the Google self-driving cars now legal here in California. Now, of course, I'm going to ask you about the obvious privacy concerns that this will bring. I mean, the NSA, the feds, they could already spy on you via your household appliances, your Android phone, even your refrigerator. Now, I think the ACLU is going to jump on this one as well. Your thoughts?
As far as the Google car, there's got to be a willing seller and a willing buyer of these vehicles. And as long as there's a willing buyer, I kind of have a hard time, not going along with it. I mean, the only problem I might have is liability. I mean, who's liable in a car traffic accident? Is it the person that bought the car, or is it Google that is navigating the car, or are they both responsible? Now, if Google would take some liability, responsibility, and take maybe half of the responsibility, if I get into a car accident with these Google cars, then I don't see much of an issue, because as long as that car is insured and there's a car accident, and I have a way of being able to sue Google and the car owner, that's good. I got car insurance, and my car insurance is liability, so if I get into car accident with whoever, it's my fault, it's covered. So that's the only, I'm hoping that concern is dealt with as far as liability issues. That's the only concern that I have with these Google cars. I could understand how people might want a Google car. Let's say if you're drunk and you're a hardcore, pot user and a drunk, and you're coming out of a nightclub at 2 in the morning, I could very well see how you want to sit in the passenger, right, and click in the destination and have the car drive you home. I could see that. That's a life-saving thing. It's good, as long as you're not, taking responsibility for the wheel, as long as the car's driving. And like I said, let's say I'm a stone drunk, I'm out of a nightclub, I'm drunk, but then I take control of the vehicle, and I put the vehicle on automatic pilot, but I'm drunk, right, and I make it home. Or if I get into a car accident, I could always blame Google, saying I'm not driving, I'm drunk, but I'm not driving. So there's a lot of issues where I could see this would be a benefit, because, especially drunks and people that are intoxicated, they would benefit greatly. Our senior citizens that can't see anymore, their motor skills have been diminished because of dementia or glaucoma or arthritis, pain issues, or diabetics with their limbs cut off. I can see a lot of people benefiting from a car that drives itself, an automatic, global positioning satellite car that drives itself. There's a lot of benefits to having that happen. So, again, if there's a willing buyer, there's a willing seller, and as long as it's not something that's coerced onto the market where everybody's got to have it, because I still would like the right to drive my own car, how I see fit.
Exactly.
If I want to pass somebody because I think they're too slow, I want the ability to pass them by. I want the ability to be able to, speed because maybe I'm going late to work. I still want to be able to drive 80 on the freeway. I still want some of those liberties, and I'll take my chances. So as long as they're not infringing on my right to drive, any vehicle, I don't see a problem with it. The only time it will become a definite issue is if they implement a law where everybody is coerced into driving a car, a Google car, or a car that drives itself. Then I would have major issues if everybody's coerced to driving that vehicle. So that's my viewpoint on it. As long as I have the freedom to be able to drive my vehicle or any future vehicle, I don't see an issue with it.
Now, Jose, I figure that a vote for Obama or a vote for Romney is a wasted vote. So I'm going to go ahead and waste my vote the correct way and vote for former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson running on the Libertarian ticket. Now, I know you're not a big fan of Romney, and I wanted to ask you about recent news that just broke regarding his tax returns and the fact that $9 million are missing from Romney's 2011 return. Now, how could a man who is a multi-billionaire claim to wear Kirkland jeans and try to appeal to the average Joe, try to appeal to the American citizens, when obviously he is running for the elite? Your thoughts?
I believe that there's loopholes in the tax code that Congress wrote in for venture capital investment firms like Bain Capital that Romney is taking full advantage of. And there's a lot of issues when it comes to reporting income because of these trusts, these whole concept of these trust organizations. Some of that money, because of loopholes, might be considered different forms of income that might not be reportable because it's in a trust structure. I mean, my best guess to this is this: I am very sure that there's loopholes in the tax code that has created a favorable mechanism where Romney could hide his money in offshore accounts all over the world. And unfortunately, I have to blame Congress for writing these loopholes in versus Romney for taking advantage of them. And I think we have a two-tier system here, you know, where a blue-collar worker, everything that he makes, he can't hide. But if you're a venture capitalist firm, then all of a sudden you're allowed to have all these exotic Cayman accounts and God knows what else, Swiss accounts, and Bermuda accounts all over the world. And I guess once the money's transferred out of the country, I guess it's a different jurisdiction. They don't have the same report structure they do in the United States. So I think there's a lot of loopholes that have been created by Congress, and I think that has to be reviewed and understood and maybe rewritten. But I blame Congress and not Romney for taking advantage of the loopholes.
Now, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you, Jose, for being on our show. We look forward to speaking with you in the near future.
Bruce, I'm very grateful for allowing me to spend some time on your show and sharing my points of view with your liberty-minded audience. And please be true to the Constitution. Please read it every once in a while to your children. And I'm very grateful that you take the time to do these shows and educate the public on where our state of our union is at. So thank you very much, Bruce. I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
Now again, ladies and gentlemen, I sign out with my classic phrase, reminding you, as always, that the freedom of the press is our right and our responsibility. Be sure to stay tuned for more of my exciting journalistic adventures.